It's a special Saturday evening edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Memphis's season has ended at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder, a 4-0 sweep. What the game was, what it wasn't, and what comes next. A brief preview of the offseason to come here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, a special bonus episode of Locked On Grizzlies. So thankful to have you with me. My name is Joe Mullinax. I am your host for the next 20 minutes or so, a nice little smidgen of a Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Thank you for being with me wherever you are coming to us from. Thank you for being an everydayer here on Locked On Grizzlies. If you are one of those, excited to chat with you about some Grizzlies basketball and the end of a pretty polarizing season. I got to tell you, if you like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get podcasts, you know, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, it has been a long season, right? Hopefully you're an everydayer. You're with us each and every time an episode drops. You know how DeMichael Cole, my co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, of course, closing down shop on the season that was 2024-2025 with the Grizzlies just being eliminated by the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was a tale of two seasons, really. You had the pre-trade deadline fun where the team was around the 2 seed for a vast majority of the run. And then you had the collapse, the fall from grace, the 2 seed stumble all the way to the play-in, winning a do-or-die game against the Mavericks to get to the A seed and then getting swept by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And to the credit of the Grizzlies, and this is important to point out, no Joe Morant due to the hip injury that he sustained in Game 3. Coming off of that game, losing that big lead. We don't have to revisit it. You already lived it with DeMichael on the last episode. I don't want to open old wounds. But for this team to pick themselves up and put forth a very gritty and competitive effort against a Thunder team that has metrics comparable to the 95-96 Bulls, a Thunder team that is the absolute best in terms of regular season performance team from this past campaign, to not go gentle into the good night, to paraphrase one of my favorites, Dylan Thomas, and to rage against the dying of the light, I give them kudos. I give kudos to the fans that showed up for Game 4. Because it was pretty embarrassing to see a third of FedEx Forum not full for a Game 4 playoff do-or-die elimination contest. The Memphis Grizzlies are the one professional franchise in the city of Memphis. They're in the postseason. Things are going poorly. No one's going to dispute that. We've talked about that a lot here on Locked On Grizzlies. It's not going well. But they were in the playoffs, and you had a chance to support your team, some of you, and you didn't, and that's disappointing. And I'm sure there are all sorts of reasons that wouldn't be reasons if Joe Morant had been healthy or if they hadn't blown the lead in Game 3, which is the very definition of front running. But I digress. Those of you that were there, salute to you, because the environment, especially as Memphis cut into the lead there late in the game, when they had the lead for select points of the second half, you were engaged. The energy was up. The team competed. And that is exactly what you want to see in these situations. That competitive nature, that fire. And you want to see it, of course, from your best players. And while Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. did not have their best games, again, they shot 10 for 32, or 32, 10 for 32. Not good enough, to say the least. They did get to the free throw line. Jaren was 6 for 6. Des was 7 for 8. They were aggressive. They didn't just settle. Desmond Bane had 5 assists, too many turnovers. He and Jaren both had 10 turnovers. The turnovers remain the story of the season, for me at least, and we'll talk more about that. But Des and Jaren competed. Wasn't good enough, but they competed. Scottie Pippen Jr., inefficient scoring the basketball, but again, he got to the charity stripe, 10 for 10 from the free throw line. 30 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. Again, too many turnovers, 5 turnovers. The Grizzlies did not protect possessions in this game, 21 turnovers to 8 for the Thunder. That's your game. That's your story. It really is that easy, at least for me it is. But the Grizzlies fought. They competed. They got to the free throw line. They rebounded. You saw good efforts from players like Santi Aldama, who after having a lukewarm series at best, needed the performance that he had in Game 4. Because Santi is someone who we'll talk more about later in the show and throughout the offseason ahead, spoiler alert. With restricted free agency on the horizon, what is the worth to these Grizzlies financially of Santi Aldama? Maybe you can let me know in the comments. Let me know on X, at Joe Mullinax, how you feel about that. And DeMichael and I will revisit that topic, of course. But that Santi, the Santi that scores 23 points, Santi that grabs 9 rebounds, the Santi that leads the team in minutes played in 40 minutes. Santi played 40 minutes in Game 4. That Santi, I'd like to keep him around. You might have to make a choice between him and Brandon Clark, depending on other potential offseason moves you make. But if you just want to run it back, I'd re-sign Santi. And Memphis has the flexibility to do that post-Marcus Smart trade. You could argue they had the flexibility to do that before the Marcus Smart trade, but that could be another conversation that I have for DeMichael and myself to share. I was impressed with Zach Edey's 7 blocks and 8 rebounds, 8 points. Edey looked better at times. There's places where his game has to grow, of course. He can't get picked on the way that he did in the mid-range on those drop coverage sets. And maybe he can't improve in those spaces because he's 7'4", 290 pounds. But you could be more understanding of what teams are trying to do to you. You can be more anticipatory to try to gain an inch or two where you would have lost it in your rookie campaign. And I do think we'll see that from Edey in the offseason. A very important offseason ahead for Zach. But he did some good things protecting the rim in this game with those 7 blocks. Even a couple of those blocks were on the perimeter, of course. And I do think, as much as I've given him a hard time, Tuomas Isalo deserves some credit for the effort in Game 4. Because I want to stress, as somebody who on a much smaller scale has experience coaching, to go from a blowout loss, the way that the Grizzlies lost in Game 3, losing your best player, and having that collapse. I think I posted it on X. How do you come back from that? How do you show up for Game 4? And to the Grizzlies' credit, they showed up. They competed. To the Grizzlies' credit, they were in the fight. That was admirable, and that was good to see. It gives you optimism if Isalo is the choice. We'll talk more about this, not just later in the show, but throughout the offseason. I'm not sure Isalo would be my choice. But if that is the way Zach Kleiman and company go in terms of hiring the next head basketball coach for this team, I don't have enough evidence to say one way or another if it's a bad decision. It may not be my preference, but it's not something that I'm going to say is a slam dunk win or a slam dunk defeat. I think he did some things to keep the ship afloat that were admirable. And there's going to be people on X and there's going to be people in the comments that say that I'm searching for moral victories again. And there shouldn't be any moral victories, and Isalo should be punished because he got swept. Don't get me wrong. I think that a lot of what has transpired since the firing of Taylor Jenkins would have happened whether Isalo was the head coach or Taylor Jenkins was the head coach. And if you wanted to fire Taylor Jenkins Sunday or Monday, given how all of this has played out, after the Thunder series, I would have been okay with it because he underperformed. But to make Isalo the guy now after seeing, 16 games, 15 games of what he is as a coach, it's a small sample size, but we have a sample size to base it off of. I didn't see anything that made me think he's the guy for sure. But I did see something in Game 4. He was able to keep those players motivated. He was able to get them in a place to scrap and claw and compete against a Thunder team, to be the aggressor, to go downhill, to draw those fouls. They fouled too much on both ends. The officials lost control of the game in some ways. But it's not like it was completely unfair. The free throws were relatively even in the contest. So Isalo deserves credit for that being a competitive Game 4. Memphis did not lie down. They did not quit. The fans that were in attendance at FedEx Forum were treated to a competitive basketball game in which the team that they supported did not embarrass themselves. And yeah, in professional sports, the bar should be higher, but given the season that just concluded, I don't know about you, but given all the context that exists, I'm going to take it. When we come back here on this bonus episode of Locked On Grizzlies, what comes next? A brief preview of the offseason to come. Stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, this bonus edition, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and I can save more cash. Managing money with your partner, my wife in this case, is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that finances can bring. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Go check them out today. So obviously, we're not going to go through the entire kit and caboodle here, right? On this bonus episode of Locked On Grizzlies. The season literally just ended with that 117-115 defeat at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder season continues. They're hopefully going to make the NBA Finals for them. I think they're in trouble personally, whether it's Denver or Los Angeles, especially if it's Los Angeles. Kawhi can play the role of Luka, and I think the Thunder are going to have their hands full in the next series. But OKC deserves the win. They're the better team, as we've said all along. Good luck to OKC. The Grizzlies have some figuring out to do. Some of you might think it starts with the general manager and Zach Kleiman being held accountable. We will talk more about that. Obviously, end-of-season media availability will be coming up maybe as soon as Sunday or Monday. We'll get to Michael's take on all of those things. He'll be there in the building. They're in Memphis covering for the Commercial Appeal, where he is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. But he brings those takes and those interviews to us here at Locked On Grizzlies. I'm sure Zach Kleiman will have plenty to say or not say if he does get removed in between the here and now. If that happens, we'll have an emergency podcast, I'm sure. But I don't think Kleiman's going anywhere. I think Zach's going to be around. And I think that Zach has to decide what he wants the direction of the franchise to be. If you go with Tuomas Isalo as your next head coach, what I think is the most likely outcome, then you are, in a way, quintupling down on youth. Because Isalo, a younger guy who doesn't have much NBA coaching experience, is now being tasked with leading a core that is expected to compete. Again, 2.5 months ago, the Memphis Grizzlies were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Things fell apart. That's why Taylor Jenkins is no longer here. But expectations are going to remain that the Grizzlies are competitive. Can Isalo meet that challenge? I think that's a fair question. Or do you go the route of an experienced coach, whether it's somebody with plenty of NBA experience, like my guy Sam Cassell, or a Terry Stotts, a Mike Malone, a Mike Brown, a Jeff Van Gundy? Lots of different ways you can go in terms of bringing in a more experienced NBA voice. Kleiman has to make that decision. I am on the record, both here on Locked On Grizzlies and on X, and in the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Go check that out. I am of the mind that I would not move on from John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., or Desmond Bane, because I have not seen them with a proven NBA head coach. No disrespect to Taylor Jenkins. Taylor Jenkins won a lot of regular season games, but a guy that has been in the NBA for a long time, a guy that understands how players work and think, that has worked with lots of different players. Frank Vogel, to be honest with you, has had success in numerous spots. I wouldn't be opposed to a Frank Vogel hiring. If one of those types comes in, let's see what those coaches get out of these core guys. I'm not saying I would run it back. I do think you need some trades around the margins. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. has proven his worth and his value. He should be around. You have to have a serious conversation about Santi Aldama, and I think that's a topic that I save for another episode maybe next week or down the road later in the month of May with DeMichael. But I do wonder, when you look at this Grizzlies team and you think about how they maximize what they have, if you make a trade involving one of the big three, the value of Jaren, the value of Bane in particular, you're not going to bring back another star. It's going to be role players that you're adding along to. So I can maybe be talked into trading one of those guys. But I wouldn't, because I want to see them alongside other veteran NBA players. Memphis has access to the full mid-level exception. And that is a positive of the Marcus Smart trade. They can use that, re-sign Santi Aldama, and they'd be in the luxury tax, but they would be away from the second apron after everything was said and done. What does this team look like in that situation where you have another actual veteran player? You don't have to depend on a Luke Kennard, who I like, to play 18 minutes. You don't have to depend on a John Conchar, who I like, to play 16 minutes. Psych, just making sure you're still paying attention. Do not like John Conchar. I'm hopeful John Conchar will be a part of a trade to bring in one of these veteran guys I'm talking about. Because John Conchar is one of the oldest players on the Memphis Grizzlies, and he's 28 years old. That is the point. Alex Caruso of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I have wanted on the Memphis Grizzlies since 2023. Caruso is 31 years old. He would be the elder statesman in Memphis by a mile. They need veteran presence. They tried Marcus Smart. It didn't work. It didn't work out, but that doesn't mean you don't try again. Not with Marcus Smart, of course, but with somebody else. There has to be more of a veteran presence on the wing in particular. Hopefully Brandon Clark is okay. He's able to come back. It's not too serious of that injury. Maybe he misses a little bit of the start of 2025, but not too much. Brandon Clark, hopefully he returns. But there are moves on the periphery. They can sign a free agent with the mid-level exception. They can pair a John Conchar contract with a younger player like a Gigi Jackson. And they can move on from that piece. And assuming that Jaren Jackson Jr. does not make all NBA, and it doesn't make sense for a contract extension to be negotiated in the here and now where you rework the entire deal, it almost opens itself up to a world of possibility where you can go in a little bit and see what this team's capable of. And if it doesn't work out at the trade deadline 2026, you can have serious conversations about what the direction is. It feels like that for me going into this offseason that we're going to have a ton of time to talk about. It's been put up or shut up time for a long time, at least the last 2 years. But you have to look at this team through the lens of a contender. They are not in that place right now, even with a healthy Jalen Wells, even with a healthy Brandon Clark. They need one or two more dudes, assuming health. And if you've been paying attention to the Memphis Grizzlies the last couple of years, you most certainly cannot just assume health. So how do you prepare for those scenarios? Zach Kleiman is going to have his hands full, but it starts with the head coach. It starts with who the messenger is going to be. Who is going to be the one tasked with getting the most out of this team, returning them to defensive strength? Because that's the main reason Taylor Jenkins is no longer here. Memphis was the top 10 defense a vast majority of the time that Jenkins was the head coach until they weren't. It fell off. And that was evidence of them losing Taylor Jenkins, or the players not listening to Taylor Jenkins anymore, or Taylor Jenkins losing the locker room, however you want to interpret it. Who's the head coach? Who gets the most out of the guys that are in the room? And then from there, how do you best utilize that MLE? How do you use the draft picks at your disposal to try to bring in extra help? I don't want to see any more doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on youth. Veteran role players that can support the guys you've got, preferably guys with championship pedigrees that may be on the tail end of their career, which is why they're available. In the absence of that, people that align with the timeline, 28, 29, 30, 31 years old, that puts you in a position to be successful as perimeter defenders on the point of attack and can rebound from those positions as well. All sorts of different possibilities and opportunities that we can talk about, but it's all going to start with end-of-season media availability coming up here in the next day or so with the Grizzlies. And again, DeMichael Cole will have that covered for us and for the commercial appeal, of course, in Memphis. And we will discuss that and more on future episodes of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I mentioned briefly earlier, LockedOnDaily.com. Make sure you're going and checking out LockedOnDaily.com. We love our podcast newsletter, Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. And again, you have a chance in the last few days here to sign up for our newsletter. And this newsletter allows for you to get expert analysis on the Memphis Grizzlies, the NBA at large. It also allows for you to get fantasy basketball advice, And also, if you sign up between now and April 30th, which is a couple of days from now, of course, a few days, you are eligible to win a $2,500 Best Buy gift card, a $300 Game Time gift card, and a $200 Fanatics gift card. Between now and April 30th, go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter. It is free, sent to your inbox daily. Again, LockedOnDaily.com. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure that you are with us the next time an episode drops, as we will finish up this season from heck and go into an offseason that is going to be pretty consequential for the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm Joe Mullinax. Thank you so much for being with me, and to Michael, all playoffs long. On to the next one here on Locked On Grizzlies. We'll catch you next time. See you.